Have you ever felt like you are running on a treadmill at the highest speed setting, sweating, heart pounding, giving it absolutely everything you have, but when you look down at the distance counter, it barely seems to have moved? You are saving, you're budgeting, you were saying no to the fun stuff, but your net worth just seems to hover in this mediocre range that never feels like freedom. There was a legendary investor named Charlie Munger, the right-hand man to Warren Buffett, who famously said, "The first $100,000 is a B word, but you gotta do it." He didn't say it was hard. He didn't say it was difficult. He used the word I probably can't say too many times without getting demonetized. But he was right. The journey from zero to $100,000 is the most excruciating financial test a human being can go through. It feels impossible. It feels unfair. And frankly, it feels broken. But here is a secret that the wealthy know and the average person doesn't. Once you cross that specific six-figure line, the entire physics of money changes. It stops being a linear grind and starts being an exponential rocket ship. The math flips, the psychology flips, and suddenly you aren't pushing the boulder up the hill anymore. You are chasing it down the hill. My name is John. This is the Penny Plan. And today, I'm going to walk you through exactly why the first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever earn, the mathematical magic that happens the second you cross that line, and how your life changes in ways you can't even imagine once you join the six-figure club. Why is that first $100,000 such a nightmare? Why does it break so many people? It comes down to something called the paper towel effect. Imagine a brand new roll of paper towels. It is thick. It is heavy. When you tear off one sheet, the roll looks exactly the same size. You tear off 10 sheets, it still looks the same. You have to use 50 or 60 sheets before you even start to see the cardboard tube in the middle. Your wealth building journey starts exactly like that full roll. When you are starting at zero, or $10,000, or even $40,000, your investment returns are invisible. If you have $10,000 invested and the market has a great year and goes up 10%, you made $1,000. That is great, but it doesn't change your life. You still have to wake up at 6 a.m. You still have to drive the car you hate. You still worry about rent. The results are invisible relative to the effort you are putting in. This is what we call the boring middle. This is the enemy. It is the long, silent stretch of time where you are sacrificing your lifestyle. You are driving the used car. You are cooking at home. And you are getting almost zero positive feedback from the universe. This is where your brain starts to rebel.
Your brain is wired for instant gratification. It wants the dopamine hit of the new watch or the vacation right now. It does not want the promise of security 10 years from now. And society is weaponized against you during this phase. When you are in your 20s and 30s, grinding for that first 100,000, you are surrounded by people who are financing their lifestyles. You see your friends leasing the BMWs and going to Tulum and buying the houses with 5% down. They look rich. You, with your growing savings account and your modest lifestyle, look poor. The pressure to quit is enormous. You start to think, maybe I should just enjoy my life now. Maybe this saving thing is a scam. This is the filter. This is the great filter that separates the wealthy from the working class. The system is designed to break you right here. It wants you to give up, cash out that 401k, buy the boat, and get back to being a consumer. But you have to understand that this resistance is temporary. It is simply the friction of getting the flywheel spinning. A heavy steel wheel takes massive energy to push for the first rotation. You are sweating, grunting, pushing with all your might just to get it to move an inch. That is the journey to 100,000. But once it starts spinning, its own weight carries it. And that is where we are going today. Let's get into the math, because numbers don't lie, and these numbers are going to blow your mind. The reason $100,000 is the holy grail of personal finance is because of how compound interest works at scale. Let's assume you were able to save $10,000 a year. That is just over $800 a month. And let's say you invested and get a 7% average return. To save your first $100,000, it is going to take you roughly 7.8 years. That is nearly 8 years of grinding. That is almost a decade of your life. That is a long time to wait for a result. During those first 8 years, you saved about $78,000 of your own money, and the market gave you about $22,000 in interest. The vast majority of the work was done by you, by your sweat, by your labor. You are the engine. That is why it feels so hard. You are carrying the entire load. But now, you have hit 100,000. You keep doing the exact same thing. You save the same $10,000 a year. You get the same 7% return. But to get to your second $100,000, to reach 200,000, it doesn't take 8 years. It takes 5 years. To get to your third 100,000, it takes 3.7 years. To get to your fourth, it takes 3 years. By the time you are aiming for your sixth $100,000, it takes less than 2.5 years.
Do you see what is happening? The gap between the milestones is shrinking. You didn't work harder. You didn't save more money. You didn't get a better return. The money started working for you. At $100,000, a 7% return is $7,000 a year. That is almost like having a second person in your household working a part-time job and giving you every single paycheck. By the time you hit $300,000, a 7% return is $21,000. That is a minimum wage employee working full-time for you, for free, 24/7, never calling in sick, never complaining. This is the moment you stop being the only engine in your financial life. You now have a co-pilot. And eventually, the co-pilot takes over the controls and you become the passenger. But the shift isn't just mathematical. It is deeply psychological. I call this the anchor effect. When you have less than $10,000, you are a small boat in a storm. Every wave tosses you around. A car repair, a medical bill, a layoff, these things threaten to capsize you. You live in a constant state of low-level anxiety. When you hit $100,000, you drop an anchor. You are a heavy ship. A $2,000 emergency happens? You don't panic. You don't lose sleep. You just write the check. The anxiety that has been humming in the background of your brain for your entire adult life suddenly goes quiet. This silence is powerful. It allows you to think differently about your career. When you have $0, you have to take whatever job you can get. You have to tolerate the toxic boss. You have to say yes to the unreasonable deadlines because you're terrified of losing your paycheck. You are negotiating from a position of weakness. When you have $100,000 accessible, you have what I call FU light money. It isn't enough to retire on a beach forever, but it is enough to survive for 2 or 3 years without a job if you live frugally. Do you know what that does to your negotiating power? You walk into your boss's office differently. You ask for the raise differently. You are willing to walk away from a bad deal. And ironically, because you are willing to walk away, people respect you more. They offer you more money. They give you better projects. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Money is attracted to confidence, and $100,000 buys you a level of confidence that you simply cannot fake when you're broke.
There is also a shift in how you view spending. This is the most surprising part for most people. When you are broke, you stress about the $5 items. You feel guilty about the latte. You agonize over buying the name brand pasta versus the generic. You are constantly penny pinching because you feel like every dollar is life or death. When you cross $100,000, you stop sweating the small stuff. You realize that a $5 coffee is mathematically irrelevant to your portfolio. If your portfolio swings by 1% in a day, that is a $1,000 fluctuation. You gain or lose $1,000 before lunch just based on what the stock market did. This realization frees you. You stop obsessing over coupons and you start obsessing over asset allocation, tax strategy, and increasing your income. You graduate from defense to offense. You realize that you cannot save your way to wealth by cutting Netflix, but you can invest your way to wealth by letting that $100,000 grow. Let's talk about opportunities. This is the capitalist phase. When you have no money, opportunities look like risks. If a friend comes to you with a great business idea that needs $5,000 to start, and you have no savings, that looks like a terrifying gamble. You have to say no. When you have $100,000, that same opportunity looks like an asymmetric bet. You can afford to lose $5,000. It won't ruin you. But if it works, it could make you millions. Wealthy people get wealthier not just because they have money, but because having money allows them to take the specific calculated risks that yield high returns. You get to sit at the table where the deals happen. I remember when I hit my first $100,000. I didn't buy a car. I didn't go on a crazy trip. I literally just looked at the screen and breathed out. It was the first time in my adult life I felt safe. I realized that if I stopped working today, I would be okay for a long time. That feeling is worth more than any luxury item you can buy. It is the feeling of ownership over your own existence. And here is the other thing. Once you hit $100,000, you have proof. For the first 7 or 8 years, you are operating on faith. You are trusting the math. You are trusting the books. You are trusting videos like this one. But you haven't seen it work yet. Once you see 6 figures in your account, you have empirical evidence that you are capable of building wealth. You prove to yourself that you have the discipline. You prove that the system works. That doubt in the back of your mind that says, maybe I'll be poor forever, disappears. You replace, I hope I can do this, with, I am doing this.
This identity shift is permanent. Once you are a person who has saved $100,000, you are no longer a consumer. You are an investor. You don't look at $1,000 and think, iPhone. You look at $1,000 and think, shares of the S&P 500. You can't unsee the matrix. And that new vision is what carries you to the million. But we have to talk about the trap. Because just like in a video game, once you beat the level boss, the next level has a new, more dangerous enemy. And the enemy of the $100,000 milestone is complacency. I call this the mid-journey crisis. You hit $100,000, you feel rich, you feel safe, and the voice in your head starts whispering, hey, we worked really hard for 8 years. We deserve a treat. Let's upgrade the apartment. Let's buy the Tesla. We have the money. This is the most dangerous moment of your financial life, because while $100,000 is a massive amount of momentum, it is not done. It is the seed, not the tree. If you start pulling money out of the machine now to fund a lifestyle upgrade, you kill the compounding just as it was starting to accelerate. Remember the paper towel roll? You finally got through the thick part. The sheets are coming off faster now. If you stop pushing, or worse, if you take $20,000 out for a down payment on a car, you are rewinding the clock by 3 years. You are putting yourself back in the slow lane. The danger is that you feel wealthy enough to spend, but you aren't wealthy enough to stop earning. You are in the dangerous middle ground where lifestyle creep can destroy you faster than when you were poor. When you were poor, you couldn't get a big loan. Now that you have assets, banks will line up to give you debt. They will offer you the massive mortgage. They will offer you the premium credit cards. You have to defend that $100,000 with your life. You have to pretend it isn't there. You have to act like you are still broke, because the goal isn't 100,000. The goal is the freedom that comes at $1 million. And the only way to get to the $1 million fast is to let the first 100,000 run wild without you touching it. Crossing the $100,000 mark is the financial equivalent of breaking the sound barrier. The shaking stops, the turbulence smooths out, and suddenly you are moving faster than you ever thought possible with less effort than it took to get started. If you are in the slog right now, if you are at 10,000 or 40,000 and it feels like it is taking forever, do not quit. You are doing the heavy lifting now so your money can do the heavy lifting later. You are buying your freedom one day at a time. Once you hit this number, you stop being a survivor and you start being a builder. You have crossed the valley of disappointment. And trust me, the view from the other side is worth every single sacrifice you are making today.
But getting to 100,000 is just the start of the exponential curve. To really master this, you need to know exactly how to optimize your investments so that the path from 100,000 to 1 million happens in record time. There's a specific strategy for that phase, and I broke it down in this video right here. Click this and let's keep building. I'll see you there.